CEO laughed when a single dad applied. Then Google's chairman called him boss. She laughed before he even sat down. Claire Ashworth leaned toward her VP of Operations, Derek Moss, and said it loud enough for the waiting room to hear. "Is that the one with the gap in his Ursum? The stay-at-home dad?" Derek smirked. 5 years out of the workforce. And he brought his kid's backpack. They both laughed. The receptionist pretended to type. Marcus Cole stood in the lobby of Ashworth and Lane, one of Chicago's fastest-growing logistics firms, wearing the only suit he still owned, charcoal. Slightly loose in the shoulders because he'd lost weight since the last time he'd needed it. His daughter Zoe's purple backpack hung from one hand because her school bus didn't come until 8:40 and the interview was at 8:15, so he dropped her at the neighbor's and hadn't had time to leave it behind. His Ursum was clean, organized, but it had a 5-year hole that started the year his wife died and ended last Tuesday, when he decided his savings couldn't stretch any further. Claire spotted the backpack from her glass-walled office, nudged Derek. Pointed. 2 junior associates at the coffee station turned to look. One covered her mouth. The receptionist, a woman named Pam, who'd been at the company 11 years, kept her eyes on her screen and said nothing. What Claire Ashworth didn't know was that the man holding his daughter's purple backpack had once built and sold a supply chain platform used by half the Fortune 100. What Derek Moss didn't know was that 3 months from now, he'd be sitting across from Marcus again, this time asking for a job. What none of them knew was that by Christmas, Claire would lose her company's biggest contract. Derek would be terminated for cause, and the man they'd laughed at in the lobby would receive a phone call from Google's chairman of the board, who would open the conversation with one word: boss. But all of that was still ahead. For now, Marcus Cole adjusted the backpack strap on his shoulder, straightened his tie, and waited for someone to call his name. 4 hours earlier, Marcus woke up at 5:15 a.m. in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a building where the elevator had been broken since March. The alarm was Zoe's voice. She'd recorded it on his phone 2 years ago. "Wake up, Daddy. It's morning time." And he'd never changed it, because some mornings it was the only thing that got him vertical. He turned it off, stared at the ceiling. Today was the day. His suit hung on the bathroom door. He'd taken it to the dry cleaner on Tuesday. $14 he probably shouldn't have spent, but he wanted to walk in looking like he belonged. Ironed shirt underneath. His only good shoes, resoled twice. He'd polished them the night before while Zoe watched cartoons on the couch. Her feet tucked under his leg for warmth because the heating was spotty, and he kept the thermostat at 64 to save on the bill. Zoe appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair wild, stuffed elephant under one arm. "Daddy, are you going to work today?" "I'm going to try, Bug. Will you be there when I get home?" "Always." She climbed into her chair. He made her oatmeal, the instant kind, 2 packets left in the box. Note to himself to buy more Thursday when the food bank on Halsted restocked. Packed her lunch, peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, a juice box. Wrote a note on the napkin, "You're braver than you know." Love, Dad. He'd been writing her lunch notes since kindergarten. She kept every one in a shoebox under her bed. He found that out by accident 6 months ago when he was cleaning her room. Opened the box expecting toys. Found 247 napkins, each one folded neatly. Zoe's shoes sat by the front door. Purple sneakers. A half size too small. She'd been cramming her feet into them since September, without complaining. He knew because she'd started walking on the sides of her feet, favoring the edges where the canvas didn't press. He'd circled a new pair in the Target catalog. $34. Next paycheck. If the interview went well, maybe sooner. While she ate, he reviewed the job listing one more time. Ashworth and Lane, Director of Supply Chain Optimization. He was overqualified, and he knew it. But it was the only opening in his field that didn't require relocation, and he wasn't pulling Zoe out of her school. Not after everything she'd already lost. She'd already lost her mother. She'd already lost the house they grew up in, sold it to cover medical bills that insurance hadn't touched. She wasn't losing her friends, too. His phone buzzed. Text from his neighbor, Mrs. Adebayo. Drop her off whenever. I've got her. He typed back, thank you. I owe you. She replied, you owe me nothing. Go get that job. Mrs. Adebayo was 71 years old and had raised 4 kids of her own. She'd started watching Zoe the week after Anna's funeral without being asked. Just showed up at the door with a casserole dish and said, give me the child. You go sleep. 5 years later, she was still showing up. He looked at the mirror one more time. Suit fit. Tie straight. Eyes tired but clear. He looked like a man who was trying. He hoped that would be enough. It wouldn't be. Not at Ashworth and Lane. Not with Claire Ashworth. The interview started 11 minutes late. Claire kept him waiting. Derek told Pam to say she was in a meeting. While she finished a personal call Marcus could hear through the wall. When she finally appeared, she didn't shake his hand. She gestured toward a chair in her office like she was directing a delivery driver. Marcus Cole. 5 years away from the industry. She said it like a diagnosis. What were you doing? Raising my daughter. Full-time? Full-time. Claire exchanged a glance with Derek, who sat in the corner chair with his tablet, pretending to take notes. Marcus caught the look. He'd been catching looks like that for 5 years, at parent-teacher conferences where he was the only father, at the pediatrician's office, at the grocery store at 2 p.m. On a Tuesday, people looked at a man alone with a child and made calculations. He was used to it. Your arsenal is impressive, Claire said, in a tone that meant but. Built a logistics platform. Sold it to Orion Systems. They integrated it into their enterprise suite. Right, and then you just stopped? My wife passed away. Our daughter was 3. I made a choice. The room went quiet. Claire uncrossed her legs and recrossed them. Derek studied his tablet. Neither said I'm sorry, neither asked her name. The industry's moved on, Claire said. 5 years is a lifetime in supply chain tech. We're using AI-driven route optimization now, predictive analytics. Real time, I know. I built the prototype for predictive route optimization in 2017. Orion licensed it. It's likely what your system runs on. Claire blinked. Derek looked up from his tablet. I'm not here because I need to catch up, Marcus said quietly. I'm here because my daughter needs stability, and I'm very good at what I do. Another silence. Longer this time. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. We'll be in touch. She wasn't going to be in touch. Marcus could tell by the way she didn't walk him out. The way Derek closed his tablet before Marcus was even through the door. The way Pam at the front desk looked at him with something that might have been pity and might have been recognition. He picked up Zoe's backpack from the lobby chair, walked to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. Behind him, through Claire's glass wall, he could see her and Derek already laughing about something. He didn't need to hear what. What Marcus didn't know as he walked out of Ashworth and Lane that morning was that Pam, the receptionist who'd been there 11 years, had a brother named Julian who worked at a venture capital firm downtown. And Julian had a meeting that afternoon with a man named Robert Chen. And Robert Chen sat on the board of directors at Google. The connection would take 3 weeks to reach Marcus. But it was already in motion. Marcus didn't hear from Ashworth and Lane. No call, no email, No rejection letter. Just silence. The professional kind that said you're not worth the courtesy of a no. He applied to 14 other positions that week. Got callbacks from 2. One was a warehouse coordinator role paying less than half what he'd earned a decade ago. The other was a 6-month contract with no benefits. He took the contract. Started the following Monday. Commute was 90 minutes each way by train. Mrs. Adebayo watched Zoe before school and after until he got home at 7. He paid her what he could. She took less than he offered. 3 weeks into the contract, his supervisor, a younger guy named Brett who called everyone bro, pulled him aside. "Dude, you're making the rest of us look bad. You redesigned the entire intake flow in like a week. I just noticed some inefficiencies." "Inefficiencies, right?" Brett stared at him. "What are you doing here, man? No offense, but you're way too good for this." Marcus shrugged. "I needed a job. You need a better one." That night, after Zoe was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and did something he hadn't done in years. He opened his old professional network. His inbox had 200+ unread messages, recruiters, former colleagues, industry contacts. He'd ignored all of them during his 5 years away. Too busy. Too tired. Too focused on being a dad to remember he'd been anything else. One message stood out. Sent 4 days ago. Subject line: "Are you the Marcus Cole from Orion?" The sender's name was Julian Osai, brother of Pam, the receptionist from Ashworth and Lane. Julian's message was brief. He'd been at a dinner with Robert Chen, who served on Google's board and was quietly building an advisory council for a new logistics initiative, a global supply chain intelligence platform. Chen had mentioned looking for someone with platform building DNA. Julian's sister Pam had told him about a man who'd come in for an interview, who'd been laughed at, and who'd said something she couldn't stop thinking about. "I built the prototype for predictive route optimization in 2017. Pam had looked it up. She'd found 3 patents, 2 industry awards, a keynote speech at a logistics conference in 2016 with 40,000 views on YouTube, and an acquisition by Orion Systems that had been described in trade press as one of the most consequential platform deals of the decade. Julian wanted to know if Marcus would take a call from Robert Chen. Marcus read the email twice, then closed the laptop, then opened it and read it a 3rd time. He looked at Zoe's door. Closed, night light glowing underneath. He typed back, "Yes." The call with Robert Chen lasted 90 minutes. Chen didn't ask about the gap in his URSUM, didn't ask why he'd been out of the industry. Instead, he asked Marcus to explain the architecture behind his original platform, from memory, without notes, and then spent 45 minutes listening. At the end, Chen said, "I've been looking for someone who understands logistics infrastructure at the foundational level. Not someone who manages it. Someone who builds it. You built something my team at Google has been trying to replicate for 3 years. I appreciate that. I'm not flattering you, Marcus. I'm telling you what I need. Would you be open to leading the advisory board? It's a consulting role initially, equity-based. But if the platform launches, we're talking about a division head position." Marcus was quiet for a long time. "I have a daughter. She's 8. I can't relocate. I can't travel more than a few days a month. I need to be home for dinner." Chen didn't hesitate. "My daughter is 12. I coach her soccer team on Saturdays. I understand. We'll make it work." 2 months later, Marcus was leading a 12-person advisory team for Google's logistics initiative. He worked from his apartment 4 days a week. Flew to Mountain View once a month, always back by Thursday evening. Zoe had new shoes, purple with silver stars. the one she'd circled in a catalog 3 times. Mrs. Adebayo still watched her on travel days, but now Marcus could pay her properly, and she'd finally accepted. He hadn't told anyone at his old contract job why he left. Just thanked Brett, shook his hand, and said he'd found something closer to home. Brett had looked at him for a long moment and said, "I knew you were somebody." He also hadn't thought about Claire Ashworth in weeks. Didn't need to. The rejection had stung, but it had also freed him to look in directions he wouldn't have otherwise. Then the conference happened. The Global Supply Chain Summit. Chicago, October, 3,000 attendees. The biggest logistics event in North America. Marcus was on the speaker list, Google's logistics division, presenting their new platform architecture. He hadn't wanted to present. Chen had insisted. People need to hear from the person who built this, not a spokesperson. He wore a new suit. Dark navy. It fit. Zoe had helped him pick it out at the mall the weekend before. She'd vetoed 3 options before pointing at the navy one and saying, "That one. You look like a superhero." He'd laughed. Bought it. Wore the tie she chose too, a subtle pattern with tiny stars. "Like my shoes," she said. "Now we match." The auditorium was full. Second row, center, Claire Ashworth. She was there with Derek Moss, who sat beside her scrolling through the program. They hadn't seen him yet. Claire was leaning over to the woman next to her, a VP from a shipping company, talking about talent acquisition challenges. Marcus walked to the podium. The moderator introduced him. "Our next presenter is the lead architect behind Google's new Global Supply Chain Intelligence Platform, a system already being piloted with 6 Fortune 50 companies. Please welcome Marcus Cole." The screen behind him lit up. His name, his title, Google's logo, his photograph. Claire Ashworth's hand stopped moving. Her coffee cup hovered an inch from her lips. She stared at the screen, then at the stage, then at the screen again. Derek Moss's tablet slipped from his hand and hit the armrest with a crack loud enough for the row behind them to look over. The VP next to Claire leaned in. "Do you know him?" Claire didn't answer. Her face had lost all its color. Marcus looked out at 3,000 people. He saw Claire in the second row. He recognized her instantly. And for one beat, one fraction of a second, their eyes met. He didn't smile, didn't frown, didn't acknowledge her beyond that single moment of contact. Then he looked down at his notes, took a breath, and began. "My name is Marcus Cole. 5 years ago, I stepped away from this industry to raise my daughter. A lot of people told me that was a mistake. Some of them laughed." He paused. Let the words sit. "I'm here to show you what I built while they were laughing." The room erupted. After the presentation, the crowd around Marcus was 3 people deep. Industry leaders, recruiters, journalists, old colleagues. Robert Chen appeared at his side, shook his hand in front of everyone, and said, loudly, clearly, with a kind of respect that comes from working with someone you genuinely admire, "This is my boss. I just help him get things done." Chen was the chairman of Google's Board Advisory Council for the initiative. He was telling a room full of 3,000 people that Marcus Cole was the one in charge. Claire Ashworth watched from the edge of the crowd. She hadn't moved from her seat for 20 minutes after the presentation ended. Derek had excused himself to the restroom and hadn't come back. She approached Marcus as the crowd thinned. Her expression was a complicated negotiation between embarrassment and forced warmth. "Marcus, that was incredible." She paused. "I think we met at our office earlier this year. I remember. I want you to know, the process, the interview, we were looking for someone with more recent You laughed at my daughter's backpack. She stopped. Opened her mouth, closed it. I was standing in your lobby, holding my 8-year-old's backpack, because I didn't have time to drop it off, and you pointed at me and laughed. Your VP laughed. Your associates laughed. I heard all of it. Claire's jaw worked. No sound came out. You didn't reject me because I was unqualified. You rejected me because I looked like a struggling dad. And you're right. I was struggling, but that didn't make me less. It made me more. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. The people around them had gone quiet. Someone was recording on their phone. A journalist from Supply Chain Quarterly had her recorder out. I don't need an apology, Marcus said. I need you to stop doing this to the next person who walks into your office with a gap on their URSAM and something to prove. He turned, walked away. Pam was standing by the registration desk. She'd come to the conference on her own time. She was smiling, and her eyes were wet. Marcus stopped in front of her. Thank you, Pam, for what you did, for telling your brother. You thanked yourself, Mr. Cole. I just made sure someone was listening. By the following Friday, 3 things happened. Derek Moss was terminated from Ashworth and Lane. An internal review, triggered by an unrelated HR complaint, had uncovered a pattern of discriminatory hiring practices he'd personally overseen. The backpack incident, it turned out, wasn't the first time he'd mocked a candidate. It was the 7th. Documentation existed for all of them. He cleaned out his desk before lunch. Claire Ashworth didn't lose her job, but she lost something more expensive. The Red Line shipping contract, Ashworth and Lane's largest account, which quietly moved its business to a competitor. The VP who'd sat next to Claire at the conference had watched the entire exchange with Marcus and called her own board that evening. We need to rethink who we're partnering with. The contract was worth $4, $2 million annually. Its departure triggered a board review of Claire's leadership. She would survive it. Barely, but she'd never stand in front of a room without wondering who was watching. Pam resigned from Ashworth and Lane 2 weeks later. Marcus hired her as his executive assistant. She'd been answering phones for 11 years. Now she managed his calendar, his travel, and, on more than one occasion, politely declined meetings with people who wanted something from him. Marcus heard about Derek's termination from Chen. He sat with it quietly. Didn't feel triumphant. Didn't feel vindicated. Just felt tired in the way you feel when something that should have been right all along finally is. People tell you who they are, he told Chen. The mistake is not believing them the first time. 3 months after the conference. Marcus woke at 6:15 now, not 5:15. The apartment was the same, but the thermostat was set to 71 and the elevator had been fixed in November, though he suspected his complaints hadn't been the reason. Zoe's purple shoes sat by the door. She'd outgrown them already. The new ones, same purple, same stars, slightly bigger, sat next to them. She refused to throw the old ones away. They're my lucky shoes, Dad. They were there the day everything changed. Coffee wasn't rationed anymore. He made a full pot. Poured 2 cups, one for himself, one that sat on the counter until it went cold. He'd done that since Anna died. Left a cup out. A habit he couldn't explain and didn't try to. Zoe never asked about it. She just knew the second cup was Mom's. Her lunch was packed. Peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, juice box. Note on the napkin, "You're still braver than you know." Love, Dad. She kept every note. The shoebox under her bed was almost full now. She'd need a second one soon. After school, Zoe ran through the apartment door holding a piece of paper. A drawing. 2 stick figures. One tall, one small. The tall one wore a tie with tiny stars. The small one had purple shoes. Above them, in her best handwriting, "My dad is a superhero." He put it on the fridge, right next to the old one that said "My mom is the best." Stood there looking at them both. Then his phone buzzed. Text from Chen. "Board approved the full launch. You did it. Dinner Saturday to celebrate? Bring Zoe." Marcus typed back, "She'll want to pick the restaurant. Chen, she has my full authority." Marcus smiled, put the phone down, looked at the drawings on the fridge one more time. Outside, December snow was beginning to fall. Inside, the apartment was warm. The coffee was fresh. The shoes were by the door, and somewhere in a shoebox under Zoe's bed, a napkin read, "You're braver than you know." She was. They both were.